There is so much to talk about, Dave. Lots of news coming out of Leafs camp today. Not so great news, I would say. We'll get to all that and more. We'll also be teeing up the game tonight, Leafs and Sabres in Toronto. Owen Power making his NHL debut. So we'll touch on all that and more on today's edition of Locked On Leafs.
You're Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Leafs podcast, one-stop shop for all things Leafs. I'm your host, Mike DiStefano from TSN 1050 Toronto Radio, also known as Al's brother from TSN's Overdrive and TSN 1050's Leafs Lunch. Joining me, my co-host, Dave Morassutti from Sportsnet, also a writer for the NHLPA. Locked On Leafs is a daily Maple Leaf-centric podcast, so be sure to subscribe for free wherever you get your podcasts from. You can now also catch us on video on YouTube. Search Locked On Leafs. And a reminder, today's day 2 of the Auston Matthews giveaway. What are we calling it? Just like extravaganza, where in yesterday's pod, we gave a word away. Today, we're going to give another word away. And at the end of the week, we'll have 5 words. They'll make up a sentence, a phrase, and you got to comment on it. And we will be choosing one of the people who commented and are subscribed to the show that will get that collectible stick. Speaking of Auston Matthews, there's some hoopla out there about the fact that his 50 and 50 doesn't count, and people are trying to discredit him getting 50 goals in 50 games. Look, we got some words about this. It kind of angers me that this rhetoric is even being spoken out there. We're going to pay it a little bit of mind, though. We will, and we're going to do that a little bit later on. We're going to tee up tonight's game, Leafs and Sabres, down at the Scotiabank Arena. But before we get to any of that, there was a plethora of updates from practice today. Not so much good updates either, David. These are not great updates. And on a scale of, well, let's get through them, and then I'll ask you the question about how worried you are. First and foremost, Auston Matthews is not on the ice today. That is the lone good news, I suppose. And you got to think to yourself, Auston Matthews not out there. That's how can that possibly be good news? And because this literally was just a maintenance day, he should be good to go. The most pressing situation development from camp today, from practice, is the fact that Jack Campbell, who sat out on Saturday, sat on the bench, who Kallgren got the start, will also not play tomorrow. Sheldon Keefe coming out saying he's not 100%. It's unrelated to his prior injury, but Erik Kallgren will get the start tonight against Buffalo. Campbell should be good later in the week to play the game against Washington. Your thoughts, Dave?
Yeah, I mean, when you see how many players are out in this, and I know that they didn't practice yesterday. They're just coming off a road trip, so you're gonna expect to see at some point the guys are gonna be kind of in and out of practice. It's when they say it's a maintenance day, I'm not too worried about it.
No, that one not for sure. But the Jack Campbell one
Yeah,
specifically.
the Jack Campbell one is a little concerning. When they say he isn't quite 100% or just below 100%, I'm just like, yo, Sheldon, that doesn't give me a baseline. Like, is he like 90% range? Is he in the 80% range? What do you mean by just below 100%? Like, that's the part that really concerned me.
Yeah, I think also the fact that it's an unrelated injury to the rib injury that cost him the last month or 5 weeks or so. So it's something else that is hindering him at this point. So it seems like the rib injury is all healed up. He hasn't looked like it's held him back at all. So now there's another injury which is undisclosed at the moment, and we're not sure what it is. And we're gonna sit here and try and think about it. But obviously, not good news. And I think what's most concerning about it is if they just wanted to just get him rest, then they probably would have came out and said it. It's like, look, we need to get Jack some rest down the stretch. And if that means starting Kallgren a couple of games that he can handle here against two non-playoff teams back-to-back in Montreal and Buffalo, we're going to do that as much as possible and then have Jack play, the games against the more proven teams, the Stanley Cup playoff caliber teams. That's not what he came out and said. He said Jack Campbell isn't 100%. They're not going to play him tomorrow. He probably will be good to go by Thursday, but not quite ready right now. And to me, that's a little concerning because come playoff time, this is a guy who I expect to play each and every night. I don't expect a tandem in the playoffs, especially if it's going to be Erik Kallgren as the other tandem, or maybe Peter Mrazek is back. Like, I fully believe that, for you to have success in the playoffs, you got to have one guy, you got to ride him, and he's got to play well, right? That's how you keep the job. It's because you're playing well. And if you're going back and forth, whether it's because, of injury, of fatigue, or, poor play, I don't see that as a good option for Toronto come playoff time. And if he's unable to, like, last he played, what was Thursday he played?
Mhm.
And if it's now Tuesday and he's still not 100% or ready to go for this game, slightly concerning come playoff time where it's every other night. And we know that it's a pretty rigorous schedule at that point in time.
Yeah, that's the part that's concerning to, as you said, because you kind of want to go into the playoffs knowing that you have the one guy. Like I was listening to Kipper and Bourne today on the Fan 590, and they were kind of saying, do the Leafs need to prepare Kallgren to play some playoff games? Like, do, and I'm just like, oh man, like this is not what I was expecting to talk about.
I've got 7 NHL games under his belt, and they're already talking like, yeah, this guy might need to start some playoff games. Yikes! Yikes! That's not good news if you're the Maple Leafs. That's for sure. Actually, Carter Hutton apparently is working his way to get back for the Maple Leafs or Marlies, one of the two. Sheldon Keefe said it's probably more of a Marlies thing,
Mhm.
but I mean, if it gets down to it, where one of these two go down, Mrazek's not ready to go. Joseph Wall is injured still. I mean, Carter Hutton at some point becomes the next man up, which is interesting to say the least. But yeah, so the goalie situation, a little bit concerning at this point, I guess we could say. Hopefully, this is just being super cautious about Jack Campbell. If this, like, that's what I'm praying for. I'm just hoping that the words that he used today, he clarifies tomorrow and basically says, no, it's not that there's an injury here. We want to make sure that he's 100% rested and we get Kallgren some reps down the stretch. I don't know. Hopefully he clarifies it and makes me less worried tomorrow on the pregame skate. We'll see, though. We'll see what ends up happening there. One of the other things to come out of today's practice, Jake Muzzin out for tonight's game as well. He apparently also not 100%, and so he's going to miss the game tonight. So this is another unrelated situation. Clearly, if it was related to a head injury, it'd be a much more concerning thing. But Jake Muzzin going to be out for tonight's game. He's only been back for what, 3 games? Yeah, 3 games, and
Yeah, yeah.
already, he needs to take a night off here.
That's
Again,
not
it's a little concerning.
It is concerning. I
Nothing
also
wrong though, especially like with him and Brody. Like, thought that they played decently well together. It's not news I expected to wake up to today.
I'm also kind of wondering, are the Leafs just also just playing it safe too, right? You have Timothy Liljegren just sitting there for no good reason, in my opinion. Like maybe this is them saying, okay, you know what, Muzz, you're coming back from a pretty lengthy layoff. You've played 3 games. Let's give you the night off. We'll bring in the other guy. But what it's the wording of how they're saying it and the
It's not that, Dave. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Like that line of thinking. I mean, Jake Muzzin needs to get up to speed and pretty quick. You know what I mean? And putting a little bit of a stopgap after 3 games to me isn't the best way to get him up to speed and get him into midseason form ahead of the playoffs. I mean, there's only 10 games to go at this point, so there's not too many games left to get him to optimal level after being out for a significant amount of time. And even before he was out, he wasn't playing very well. Like, there's not many games to get Muzzin back into shape, into the form that the Maple Leafs need him to be. And by sitting him out voluntarily, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, which, this is probably not a significant injury, but, this is something that is lingering or hindering him enough where they feel that, 100% Liljegren is better than 80% Jake Muzzin tonight, rather.
Yeah, like, no, it's still it's concerning no matter what, because you expect guys to be able to play as much as possible, and yeah, 3 games is not a lot. I'm just wondering if there's probably something that has come up that we just are not aware of. Um, I'm curious to see how Sheldon Keefe kind of words it when asked about it again. I don't know, maybe it just wasn't pressed upon enough, or he just didn't have anything to really elaborate on. But I'm going to assume at some point, if let's say he misses the game against the Sabres and then the next game he's out, then we can kind of put the piece together. There's something that's popped up here.
Yeah, he said he should be good to go for Thursday's game against Washington. So he kind of had the same, like, insert player here with Campbell and Muzzin. Like, both of them said the same thing. Not quite 100%. It's unrelated to their previous injury. Not going to play tonight. Should play on Thursday. Both of those guys is what he had to say that about. So I found that to be kind of interesting. All right, why don't we take a break? There's a couple other notes that came out from practice today that I'll tell you about. A little bit more of an update from Ondrej Kase and Rasmus Sandin, 2 guys who have been out a little bit longer term. We'll tee up tonight's game as well and talk to you a little bit about where things are starting to shape up for the Maple Leafs and where they most likely will end up finishing within this divisional race here with just 10 games to go before playoff time. Before we get to that, Dave, though, let me tell you guys all about one of today's show sponsors, and that's Shady Rays. Shady Rays is an independent sunglasses company that gives you the features of $200 sunglasses for a fraction of the price. That means polarized lenses, well-constructed durable frames, and premium and high-end finishes. Also, something you won't find anywhere else is Shady Rays' Insane Protection Program. Shady Rays includes lost and broken protection on every pair. They'll send you a brand new pair if you lose them, no matter what happened. Give them a try, and if you don't love them, you'll pay nothing. It's as simple as that. Plus, 10 meals are donated to fight hunger in America when you shop with Shady Rays. Exclusively for our listeners, head to shadyrays.com. Use the code LOCKEDON to get 50% off 2 or more pairs of polarized sunglasses. That's code LOCKEDON for their best deal of the season. 50% off 2 or more pairs of Shady Rays sunglasses just for our Locked On Leafs listeners, backed by over 150 verified 5-star reviews. Today's show is also brought to you by betonline.net. It is your number one source for all your betting stats and sports info. Find all the latest sports developments, league news, and news, including this year's basketball playoffs, the hockey playoffs, and the start of the Major League Baseball season. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sport wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, it's where the game starts. Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. I'm Mike DiStefano. Got Dave Morassutti with me. We're your hosts here at Locked On Leafs. And speaking of Bet Online, you can place a wager on tonight's game. I believe I saw, what was it there? Leafs are favored massively, minus 445 on the money line. They, according to Money Puck 2, have a 79% chance to win this game. 79% chance to win this game, according to moneypuck.com. So that could be a wager if you want to go out and place one there. But a couple other things that we want to update you on before we really get into tonight's game, start previewing it. Ondrej Kase officially diagnosed with a concussion. He'll be out indefinitely, and that is terrible, terrible news. We've been wondering what's been going on with Kase. Haven't heard much about him really since he left the game. What was it, 3 weeks ago, I want to say 2 or 3 weeks ago, 2.5 weeks ago or so. There hasn't been much updates, and it was just more so, yeah, no, he's feeling okay. And then today we hear the news that nope, it's another concussion, and he'll be out indefinitely. And that's just such tough news to hear, especially Andre Kasha, since we already know what his history is like.
Yeah, and this is a guy that I would have liked to have had in the playoffs because you need the depth. You need guys that can be able to step up. I feel like the lineup, you always want to have your best optimal lineup in the playoffs. And it sucks because this was looking like he was gonna get past some of those injury issues. Yeah, he missed time this season, but yeah, this is just so tough for him because you don't know where the future holds from. Like, this is a guy that's clearly has one hurdle that's keeping him from being an everyday NHLer, and that's injury problems, not performance based.
Yeah.
He was such a great story when he came out of Anaheim, a guy that nobody thought would get anywhere really, as a late round pick. And it's just really unfortunate because I liked his style for the Leafs. I liked the way he fit up and down the lineup when they needed him.
Yeah, and I was kind of hoping that he could return here for the Maple Leafs in the playoffs, and I guess he still might. It's not completely out of the realm of possibility. But he was someone who I was pegging to be a fourth liner for this team, and then you just kind of you keep Blackwell and Kasha as legitimate fourth line options, and then you could kind of rotate in, Spezza, Abruzzese. You could rotate in Wayne Simmons, obviously. But those two could be your staple fourth liners, or even he could play up on the third line. He played really well with David Camp earlier in the season. Injuries arise, he could play up into your top six as well. He's a solid player, and someone who could play up and down your lineup, like you said. And it's definitely going to be a missed piece here. When you talk about depth, I suppose that's some depth that the Maple Leafs, I think, we're banking on being able to have come playoff time. And now it's a little bit up in the air. It's a little bit more of a question mark, I guess you could say. One other injury to update you on, Rasmus Sandin, who has begun skating, still not practicing fully with the team yet, though. He's considered week to week, and Sheldon Keefe said the earliest that they are expecting him to be back would be the final week of the season, if not in the playoffs. So Sandin not likely to rejoin the team until a little bit later on in the year as well. And it's interesting because now, like, is Sandin the eighth defenseman on this roster when he gets back into the NHL? Like, when he gets back and healthy?
I think the addition of Giordano definitely pushes him down because Gio's playing on that second power play unit. Like, it's almost like, who are you taking out to bring in Rasmus Sandin? Right, you're not taking out Morgan Rally, you're not taking out TJ Brody, you're not
Yeah.
taking out Giordano, not Jake Muzzin at this rate. So it does feel like that. It's unfortunate, but it also just attributes to the fact that a lot of analysts have said how much the Leafs need the depth to be able to contend. And we know that there's a couple of guys like a Jake Muzzin who could get injured, and Rasmus Sandin's stock changes in account of one injury, right? So I feel like saying he's the eighth defenseman might suck for him, but it also just also attests to the depth that this team currently has.
Absolutely. It's a good problem to have when
Yeah.
you're having when there's arguments about who should be in and who should be out, where you're mad that that certain players like a Liljegren or a Muzzin or a Hall or a Sandin, one of those guys are going to be taken out of the lineup. Lapushkin as well, going to be taken out of the lineup, and those are all serviceable NHLers who are well deserving of being top six guys who are everyday NHLers. And unfortunately, the way that they've built this blue line, which is obviously a good thing, thank you, Kyle, they've got depth, man. They've got depth. It's good problems to have, but that means that there'll be some pretty good players on the outside looking in. But hopefully what that does create is some internal competition too. You're going to have to play your way to stay in the lineup. I'm looking at guys like Liljegren, guys like Hall, even Brody. I mean, or not Brody. He's good to go. But Jake Muzzin, if we see Muzzin fall off, I'm not too sure his spot is guaranteed in the lineup. You would think it is, But if he turns out to really fall off a cliff and plays like the way he was playing beforehand, the way that him and Hall played together, that first game he was back, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe we could see him get a night off just to see what some other guys look like. But regardless, it's a good problem to have 8 solid NHL defensemen. Speaking of NHL defensemen, Dave, Owen Power makes his NHL debut for the Buffalo Sabres. He's a Mississauga born and bred kid. He'll be making his debut inside the Scotiabank Arena, a place where he himself said he spent many a nights watching, the Toronto Maple Leafs play. You excited to watch him? I think that he's going to be a stud. What he was able to do in like those 2 games at the World Juniors this year, scored the hat trick in the one, really really put himself on the map, I think, in this one, because he didn't get to play last year in the World Juniors, right? Their coach Mel Pearson kind of held him back, said, "No, we're not going to send you," but then was able to send him this year, and he dazzled in those 2 games that he played, plus a couple others, and he was just solid all year long with Michigan. I'm excited to actually watch this kid. I'm not typically like overly excited to watch opposition rookies in their first game, but Owen Power, that's a big name to watch. I'm excited for it.
Yeah, and I know it's hard to get excited about the Sabres' future, but this is another guy who's looking to usher in this new crop of players. But yeah, first overall pick, the Canadian ties. It's always fascinating to watch these guys, and he came from a real, like, if you watch that NCAA team, Michigan's team, I really did think that they were going to win it all.
Yeah.
And I feel like they were kind of disappointed with how everything ended, but they had such great talent on that team, and he was the leader of it, right? There
Yeah.
was no doubt that he was going to be on Canada's roster for the Olympics when it was announced that guys like him were going to be eligible, and we were robbed of seeing him at the World Juniors. Like, it's those, like, these are the young guys, the young exceptional players that Leafs fans are going to have to be unfortunately going to be seeing for a while. So you better get used to seeing him and scouting what he brings to the Sabres. It'll be very interesting to see how much they push him out there in his debut.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, man, like Buffalo's doing some good things, it looks like the roster that they're constructing, it seems like Donnie Granato kind of has that team playing the right way, right? It looks like there's a good culture. Tage Thompson's having a breakout season. I think I saw Jeff Skinner just scored his 30th, back to being a 30 goal scorer this year out of nowhere for Jeff Skinner, who else is there's a couple other players that are just having fantastic years for the Sabres. Peyton Krebs has been pretty good since getting his call up. Obviously, you've got Alex Tuck, who's just continuing to be a solid contributor in all aspects of the game. I like what the Sabres do bring. They look like a team that, once these young kids like Owen Power, Peyton Krebs, a bunch of these other young kids that they have develop and turn into players, I mean, that's gonna be a better, border of the well, what am I talking about? Battle of the QEW.
Yeah.
That's the word I'm looking for. The battle of the QEW is going to be heating up over the next couple of years. I truly believe that because they're a solid squad that's got a bright future at the very least. All right, why don't we get into the game itself? Before we do, why don't you tell us about one of today's show sponsors? And I believe that is Rock Auto.
Yes, obviously, if you're looking to get some car parts for your car, especially with spring coming up, you want to look at making improvements after a very, very tough winter. Go and look at Rock Auto. You can save money and save time. Why choose to spend 30%, 50%, even 100% more for the same parts that a local chain store or car dealership sell? Rock Auto is a family business serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. They're reliably low prices for every customer. They have everything you could need: brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, and even a new carpet. So make sure you go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck. Write "Locked On" in their "How did you hear about us" section so they know we sent you there. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need at rockauto.com.
Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. Mike DiStefano with Dave Morassutti. We're your hosts here at Locked On Leafs. And David, I think it is time. I think it is time for us to give away the second word for the contest. And I need to remember exactly what the word is because I'm pretty sure. Yeah, there it is. Okay. So the second word, if you missed the first one, you got to go back to yesterday's podcast. So you got to make sure you write it down to remember. But for today's podcast, the second word is four. Four. The second word is four. Now remember,
FOR.
FOR. Yes, FOR. Not the number. The I don't know what is it? A noun? A verb? I don't know what the heck that is considered. The word for that is not the number. Okay, that's what it is. I know, like preposition. Are those prepositions? Is that what those things are called? I don't know. The funny thing is I minored in writing in university.
I'm an
I went
English
to
major, Mike.
I went to journalism school and I forget what it is. I believe it is a preposition. And there's probably some English major, some, university kid right now in J school, and they're like, you are a moron. It is this. I'm hoping you figured it out by the time I was sitting there allowing you to look it up.
By the way, it is a preposition. I know.
Oh, got it. I got it. All right, cool. We're good. Anyways, so that's the word. Four. Now remember, you got to tune in tomorrow, Thursday, and Friday for the final three keywords. It'll all make one phrase, and then we'll choose. You comment it all on Friday, and then we will choose a winner on Monday and let you know who will be taking home the Auston Matthews collectible stick. Here it is for those who are on YouTube. You can get a glimpse of this bad boy right here. Could potentially be a golden superstar stick in there. Who knows? That'd be cool. That would be very, very cool. All right, let's get back into the game tonight. Leafs and Sabres. Puck drop 7 o'clock at Scotiabank Arena. It's going to be Erik Kallgren in goal, like we noted earlier today. So Erik Kallgren and potentially Craig Anderson has been the guy recently for the Buffalo Sabres. They've yet to name a starter at this moment in time. They could name one earlier or later in the day, but as of now, they have not. But what's interesting about the defense is we talked about how Jake Muzzin not playing in this game, but we didn't mention that it really made some interesting changes here for the blue line. So this is what the blue line is going to look like tonight against the Buffalo Sabres. So it's going to be Morgan Rielly with Timothy Liljegren, Brody and Hall back together, and then Giordano and Ilya Lyubushkin. There it is. Those are the lines in practice today, and that's what we're expected to see. So
Minus Clifford for Matthews.
Right. Yeah. So Clifford, because Matthews was a maintenance day, and that's a big reason how you could tell because Clifford was there. So fill that in. Simmons was absent today as well. Actually, he was just a little under the weather, so he may not play tomorrow as well. So Abruzzese could get back into the lineup. But outside of that, the forward lines remain pretty much the same. And the blue line is where we have the biggest difference with Muzzin being the guy in the press box due to him not being a 100% right now. Don't know exactly what that means, how severe whatever he's dealing with, his ailment is, but it's severe enough where they're not going to play him tomorrow, and they're going to get a look at a different crop of defensemen. And this is the way it's going to shake out. So Riley Liljegren, Brody Hall, Gio, and Lyubushkin. David, what do you think about this 6-man group here? I mean, Riley Liljegren's interesting. It's real interesting. And I was actually digging into the numbers. And when you look at their expected numbers together as a pair, it's actually he's been Riley's best partner, funny enough, with like a 65% expected goal rate with those two on the ice.
Yeah, and some people were kind of saying that it wasn't a great pairing at times. It's not the most optimal defensive pairing in terms of, what, like both guys aren't really known for being pure shutdown defenders. I get that.
Yeah.
But I think they want to see how Timothy Liljegren fits into that. They're trying to see what's the optimal place for him. And we know he works well with Gio. Yeah, like.
Yeah, well, I think that's why it's perfect to do this lineup at home, right? Because you get last change, and you can figure out, you can kind of shelter Liljegren with offensive zone faceoffs,
Yeah.
right? And that's why you look at Brody and Hall. strictly D zone guys. Gio and Labushkin, they can be D zone guys as well for the most part. And the only time you really need to throw Lily and Riley out there is mainly for offensive zones. And you're playing the Buffalo Sabres, which means you should have a lot of zone control. And there's a good chance there'll be a large amount of offensive faceoff opportunities, which you'll be able to play those guys. So that's kind of also one of the things that you can look at it. And because they're at home, they have last change. They can kind of shelter Liljegren so that those defensive deficiencies he can't really get exposed all too much. Not to say they can't happen, but it's less likely to. Also, Liljegren's a bit of a different defenseman since we last saw him with Morgan Riley. Like, he's really upped his game since Mark Giordano's come over. Those two have played well. And it's not just Gio elevating Liljegren. Liljegren's making better decisions as a defenseman. Like, his mind is working a lot better right now. So I'm also curious to see what this level of play out of Liljegren, how that pairs with Morgan Riley compared to what we saw earlier in the year. This could be a really good pairing.
Yeah, and I'm actually curious of the Giordano Lyubushkin pairing just because Lyubushkin, we know what he brings. I'm wondering if this is where they want to see Giordano not worry about too much about the defensive side and start to show his offensive instincts a little bit more. Um, I'm curious about that pairing too. We know what Brody Hall are. We know
Yeah.
what that's like. I think this is Sheldon Keefe giving himself a different look, right? Riley Liljegren, as you said, we haven't seen them in a while, so maybe he's just gonna want to see how they do after a little time apart. But the Jordan Lyubushkin, I just think he wants to tinker and see, is this something he could potentially use down the road and into the playoffs.
Yeah, and at home against the Buffalo Sabres, though Buffalo has given Toronto a lot of grief this season, this is the game to do it, right? Like, against Florida on the road, against Tampa on the road, probably not the game to experiment with your blue line, but at home against the Sabres, I think that's a sound time to do it. So I guess if you're going to, it makes sense. Plus, with Muzzin out, it allows you to do a couple of other things and see what else you can work with and try and find chemistry. See what other pairs could work should injuries start to pile up come playoff time. Because if they do make a run all the way to through the Stanley Cup playoffs, there's a good chance that they don't only use 6 defensemen. So one guy goes down, you got to kind of shuffle the deck, and you want to make sure that everybody's kind of had a chance to play with each other, and this is an opportunity again for guys to create chemistry. So I agree with you. I'll be definitely that's kind of thing that I'll be looking for tomorrow. See if Matthews can continue his tear, his tear on the league, continue to score at an elite pace. Anything else that you'll be kind of keying in on in this game tonight against the Sabres?
I mean, the chase for 60 for Auston Matthews, obviously he needs 2 more.
Yeah.
Just see if he can get that done. And I want to see if maybe Sheldon Keefe considers tinkering things a little bit more on the forward line. He's kept things pretty much the same, but I wonder if the Leafs, let's say, are ahead or whatever, does he start to kind of mix things around a bit? Now, I'm not saying throw everything in a complete blender, but does he try to move guys around a bit and just provide some different looks up front? Because we know he does like to do that once in a while.
Yeah, could totally be the case, especially when Nylander and Tavares have been playing apart for quite some time. At some point, do they go back together? Perhaps. Although Tavares has played considerably better without Nylander for whatever reason. It's kind of bizarre, but it's been the case. The Leafs come into tonight with a 79% chance to finish second in the Atlantic with home ice advantage. If they win this game against Buffalo, that percentage odds raise to 82%. If they win in regulation, if they win in overtime, it goes to 81.9%. So it's literally 0.3% difference if it's an overtime or regulation win. If they lose, however, it goes down to 10% or 69%. So it goes down 10% if they lose in regulation. It goes down 2.5% if they lose in overtime. So a victory, clearly what the Maple Leafs are going to want in this game. Before we get out of here, though, we kind of teased it earlier in the show. You're hearing some people trying to discredit Auston Matthews for his 50 and 50 feet. Please tell me this isn't true.
What it is basically apparently Leafs fans aren't allowed to celebrate anything anymore.
Well,
And
that's true. Yep, that is true.
yeah,
That's what I hear from everybody else.
I've been hearing just a lot of different takes on a lot of different things, but this one caught my attention where there's been we showed those graphics where everybody was honing in on Matthews getting 50 in 50 games. And people's like, well, he didn't score 50 goals in 50 games. And I'm like, no, he didn't. He scored 50 in his last 50 games. Like, I don't know what people want. Like, scoring 51 goals over a 50 game stretch. I don't see really the difference. I understand people saying, he didn't do it from the start of the season. And a friend of mine was mentioning this to me. He's like, it's much harder to do it later in the season, like to do it at a different point in the season, because we know that goaltenders aren't exactly at their best at the start of the season. Teams' defenses really aren't the best at the start of the season. So generally, offensive players get off to really hot starts, and Auston Matthews came into the season coming off wrist surgery.
Yeah.
Like I don't know how you're like, this is an incredible feat for the sport. I don't know why people are trying to discredit it. I know there's a Toronto bias. I totally get that. And probably that's just what it is. But a guy scored 51 goals over a 50 game span. Like, I don't know what else people are like. I don't know how you're trying to, why people are trying to discredit it.
It's only
That was
because it's Toronto, man. Like, that's literally it. That's just stupid. Honestly,
unbelievable.
it's rhetoric that I'm not here for. Like, at the end of the day, the man has scored 51 goals in his last 50 games. Regardless if it's from the start of the season, mid-season to end the season, I don't care. It's a 50-game span where he has now scored 51 goals in that span, something that nobody has done since 1995, 96. Regardless of what you want to say, if it's at the beginning or midway through the season, it's still something that has not been done in a nearly 30-year span. You know what I mean? So I don't know how you could say or sit here and discredit the accomplishment, because it's unbelievably special what he's doing and what he's done this year. So I I, I won't have it. I won't have it. I will
Nope.
not entertain said people. They're just jealous that they don't get to watch, cover, and
They don't
marvel.
get to enjoy Austin Matthews like Leafs
That's it.
fans do.
That's it. And you know where a bunch of them are from that are complaining about this? You know where they're from.
Oh, yeah.
Two places
La Belle Province.
in Edmonton.
Oh, yeah.
Those are the two spots. Those are the two fan bases
Those are
that
the
are trying
culprits.
to discredit it. Boston too, because Cam Neely, there was some Cam Neely issues before about whether or not he had scored 50 and 50, but there was like injuries or something in between. I was reading about that before. So maybe those three spots are the only fan bases that are crying about it. And I think you know why. And at the end of the day, the dude has scored 51 goals in 50 games in a row. I don't care when those games are. In 50 straight games, he has 51 goals. It's an amazing accomplishment, an amazing feat. We're not taking away from the guy. Absolutely not. All right, that's going to do it for us here today. Enjoy the game tonight, ladies and gents. That will do it for us on the pod. I'd like to thank you all for listening and supporting the show. You can subscribe to the Locked On Leafs podcast on all podcasts and platforms and receive daily Leafs content. Follow myself on Twitter at Mickey_Canuck. Follow the show at Locked On Leafs. Follow Dave at D_Morassutti. And you can also follow us now up on YouTube, Locked On Leafs on YouTube. Subscribe. Toss us a thumbs up. Comment, share, all that good stuff. It'd be really, really much appreciated. We'll be back to another episode tomorrow. We will be teeing up. No, we're not teeing it up. We're going to be breaking down the game with the Leafs and the Sabres. And that comes at you tomorrow. Until then, keep it locked right here on